I wonder if we could, if you could offer some thoughts on the kind of arrangement of this this conference as a tool for enabling collective thinking, and whether or not Noah Politics would necessitate devising alternative pedagogical, discursive, relational, educational strategies for the transmission and emergence of new concepts, ideas, and things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to use it as an example, I mean, the conference is a set of events and a set of encounters, or you could take it as one event where a group of individuals in one room with different backgrounds, different points of view, different techniques, different philosophical views come together and are individuating this event and encounter. But it's irreducible, I think, to its technical conditions, which is why an encounter is something that's beyond where you've come from in that sense. Does that kind of answer the question? Where it's kind of a site where this can happen. It's the fact that there's something going on which supplements this kind of technical dimension with a source of novelty, if that makes sense, that is outside of maybe regular perspectives.
Yes, I think to what extent is this setting regulating the conditions of transindividuation, and could it be done better, really, is what, you know, as an encounter, as a learning encounter. Are there other methods, other practices that could be, you know, engineered, techniques to be developed, etc., etc.?
Yeah. There will be other ways to do things, yeah. I mean, that's...
But I have to say that we will try to concretize what you say after the discussion. This is what is at stake.
Thank you very much, Ben, for your intervention that I loved so much. And I have two questions, or maybe one question and one commentary. First, I agree with you when you say that we could think the event pharmacologically, but I doubt that the Deleuzean event is a pharmacon as such. According to Deleuze, the event is a singularity, but we must consider that the event avec the E major is not what it happens, but something into what it happens. This is a singularity, and this singularity must be thought. To extract the event from the events is a pharmacological way to encounter the event. And I agree with you when you say that the task of philosophy and the task of thinking is becoming worthy of this event. And Bernard, in Pharmacologie du Front National, has made a deep link between the Stoiциan event and the pharmacological therapeutic as a quasi-causality. And so I think that the path it's good. It's very hard to think the event as a pharmacon, but the path to treat the event pharmacologically, it's a good path for research, for a deeper research. And a little bit commentary about the common image of thought. And I agree with you also for this claim. To think is to transform the common structures of thought by trans-individuating them. And I add, in order to compose a shared and collective new image of thought. So maybe we could address to Deleuze the idea that to become worthy of what it happens is to pass from a bad, common and past image of thought to a new, common but collective image of thought. Collective as a collective construction of this common. It's not the common as a prejudice, but a common as a construction. And so a common as a future that we have to construct. And we have to construct with all the pharmaca that we encounter, but by considering that the event is composed by pharmaca, but to always pose the doubt of the event as a pharmacon. I don't know if you have understand something.
No, thanks. Your first point, I mean, really kind of touches on where I kind of want to take this, and obviously there was no room for this today, but the distinctions between events, non-events, accidents, surprises, these different things, accidents in Malibu, surprises in John Lugnancy, and try to maybe expand and interrogate what an event is even more in Deleuze, because I'm very aware that in this paper there's not much conceptual rigor between the pure and the actual event, or the big E and the small E event, and that's something I need to take into account and work on, so thank you. And I think the distinction you made between the common and collective image actually could prove to be quite a good distinction for me. Because the common image of thought still rings with the kind of pejorative that it has in Deleuze, whereas collective would be a good way to maybe articulate the difference. It's a nice nuance. But then, if I heard you correctly, you brought the common back in as well. So there's the common image of thought and the common. Is that where you were coming from? Yeah, the commons. Yeah, that's a notion. I don't know how I feel about that notion, but I'll have to think about it. Thanks, Paolo.
Yes, Ben, thank you so much for your paper. I haven't really written a question. I'm still trying to process all the, the argument. But this is something with Paolo we've been trying to work on quite a bit. So this is helping us a lot. Your paper, we feel. More specifically, later on today, I will be talking about noology in Deleuze and Guattari, especially in 1,000 Plateaus, where I believe that with noology they have taken the project of ideology critique further. And here I disagree with Bernard when he says that Deleuze and Guattari left the project of ideology critique, and I will try to demonstrate very humbly and very only in 45 minutes, but I will try to show maybe perhaps some lines where we can already begin to think. And I think it is through the image of thought, exactly a little bit what you, not because you were focusing also on the event, and I haven't managed yet to come to the event. I'm still working with the image of thought and throughout Deleuze's work. And here, noology, he says, is the study of images of thought, but it's more than the study. It's no logos, no logy, but it's in fact also the creation of and the invention of new images of thought. And here, Deleuze, it's true, was hesitating. He wanted to destroy images of thought sometimes and have a thought without representation as a kind of very utopian project. And in other books, like in Proust, for instance, the one in Proust, he says he's found a new image of thought. So it is this already here, the pharmacology of the image of thought, if you wish to put it in these terms, there's a bit of a tension. And I think what's very important is to think as a you talked about the technique of thought or the physics of thought, like what Zurabishvili has called the physics of thought. And I think it's very much about trying to go beyond the opposition between content and forms, So Deleuze really wants to put forward new forms, and I think especially this was set up in. I found this in the very last pages of 1,000 Plateaus, and I think he does this with basically with the cinema books. You know, cinema books is the practical knowledge. You know, it is how he really demonstrates how the images of thoughts can be put forward, and it is almost a kind of encyclopedia of, he says, of science, but also perhaps of images of thought.
Thanks, Benoit. That's really useful. I mean, one thing I am, again, another hesitation, this is quite speculative at the minute, is obviously this is slightly polemic in the way I've approached Deleuze's oeuvre. So, I mean, there's the quotation from the first chapter of 1,000 Plateaus where he says, you know, we need tree images just as much as we need rhizome images of thought, which is precisely the conjunction between a collective or a sort of a more common image, a more actual image, and its virtual taking a part of this image. It's a new line of flight. And it is that which kind of maybe is what I'm trying to move towards. So I think one thing that maybe we'll talk about this later is how to maybe bring Deleuze closer to pharmacology, maybe rather than saying he is against it. Maybe distinguishing between the different positions in his different texts on this, because I think maybe it's Guattari that brings him closer to pharmacology. I mean, it's his basis in therapeutics and psychoanalysis. Maybe that's the link, maybe through Guattari, to kind of have very Guattarian Deleuze. Perhaps that's one way of approaching the kind of things you've flagged up.
Yeah, Ben, thank you very much indeed for your paper. I think I have a question about history, and it relates very much to questions of the event, capital E, and events. Clearly, history would form part of the a kind of epiphylogenetic horizon that you're describing, within which the après-coup selection and differentiation of the encounter and so on takes place. But the question I have is whether the account that you've elaborated from out of Deleuze via Stiegler, whether the description that produces of thought itself has a history, or whether, as it were, in as much as there has been thought, it has ever been thus. I don't know if that's clear.
I mean, in terms of the history of thought alongside the history of things that cause thought.
I suppose what I'm asking is whether the account that you're elaborating is, I mean, one way of thinking of it would be whether is it a transcendental account, or is it an account which itself is historically situated and contingent in that sense?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have the answer, but maybe it's a case of moving towards what we find in the first volume of Technics and Time and trying to not think against that opposition, in fact, and try and think them together. I think maybe in some ways that's what I'm trying to do to Deleuze. I mean, in a sense, transcendental empiricism does this, but I mean, as we've kind of picked out, there is in places in Deleuze a kind of a transcendental approach to the singular with disregard for the determined, and that's what I'm trying to unpick, if that makes sense. So to try and think a singular approach to a transcendental problem, but combining the two. I mean, how successful I am at the moment is up for debate, I think, but I think maybe that's the aim. But I haven't thought about it like that, so thanks very much. That's a great question.
Have I understood well, or you talked of the event as an hyperbolization?
No, that was just in relation to Zurabishvili's reading.
Yeah, and could you tell us more about it? Because it seems to me there's at least a germ of a possibility of problematizing the very notion of event.
In what sense? Sorry.
Well, if I have understood well, if the event is an hyperbolization of a, if I remember your quotation, of a singularity, probably we could also rethink the event in terms of its function, meaning not to take it for granted.
In that maybe it's a gift, in that kind of sense. What do you mean by take it for granted? Sorry.
Well, the fact that the event is so important, so crucial, not only for Deleuze, but a lot of other contemporary thinkers, doesn't mean that we cannot problematize its usefulness in general. It's something we are taking for granted, that we have to simply to deal with it. It's a necessary notion. I wonder if it's true.
Oh, I see, sorry. That makes more sense now. I mean, I think in a sense, maybe both. You know, it's something that we've inherited as a problem for thought, for thinking. So in a sense, we shouldn't take it for granted, and we should problematize it, but it doesn't mean we have to get rid of it or disuse it. So I guess maybe between the two, if that makes sense, you know, accepting that it's something we maybe do take for granted, but using that productively, if that makes sense, as a, you know, something that we've inherited, if that answers your question. Thanks.
First, thank you very much. I will need to read the whole text because you sent me a text which is longer. Now, I just wanted to continue the discussion about the common and the collective. This is a very important question. The collective and the common are not the same. And for me, there is a problem with Simondon on this side. Collective individuation participates to the production of the common, but the common is not collective individuation. For example, and this is a political and juridical question, and also an economic question, very important one today. And the question is how to practice, let's call that an organology of collective individuation, because for answering your question, I think this is the question we have to address. And I would like myself to continue this meeting, this conference, by workshops for exploring this. But how to do that in a perspective of Creative Commons, not only in the sense of Creative Commons, as everybody knows, but in the sense in which we should, I believe that today, and particularly with the work of Antoinette Rouvroy and other works like that, this one, we should explore, study, and propose new perspectives on how to pass from collective individuation to what I call, for example, social systems. A social system is not only a collective individuation. It is a meta-stabilization by law, by politics, etc., etc. And this is not only the question of collective individuation in Simondon. And I believe to reread Simondon, Foucault, Deleuze, Virno, and all those guys, in this perspective, is an important task, a political task for thinking the future. Thank you very much for your lecture.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks very much.